From the campus of Xavier University.
Look.
WBOK Go and Equity Media Station.
I'm Tammy Eswick with BIN News Now. The Rolling Stones have come out with a tribute album honoring the late Louisiana black Zydeco pioneer Clifton Chenier.
This is a little song they call Zydeco et Pasale. This is no salt in your snap bean.
That album set to be released this week. Chenier is known as the King of Zydeco and would have turned 100 on June 25th. And speaking of Louisiana, cops just got the green light to give slow pokes driving in the left-hand lane tickets for driving too slow. The Louisiana legislature passed a law that says if you're caught driving 1 mile slower than the posted speed limit, cops can ticket you. Some black drivers WAFB 9 spoke to say they like the law. The People's Union USA boycotting McDonald's. They say the company's backed away from its DEI programs. McDonald's says they've only changed the language. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
It's now time for Let's Elevate, the Arnie and Cary Show with Arnie Philco and Cary Grant.
Good evening, everybody. This is Cary Grant. This is the Arnie and Cary Show, and I have my great guest host with me, Mr. Walt Leger, again tonight. We had a great time last night, and Walt said, well, I think I might come back. So we're glad to see
that was my first one, and you made it easy for me, Cary.
It was a lot of fun.
Had a lot of fun, too.
Yeah.
Good to work with you.
I just, we're actually got a little TV in the background, and we were looking at the celebrations about to start with the Tigers. We talked about this yesterday. Tigers baseball, once again, national champions. And we were just remarking about how we like this team because this team seems to be a gritty, down-to-earth, very, very poised team. A lot of young kids, a lot of people transfers and all that. And I think they kind of follow the coach. I think that people's personalities follow the coach's demeanor more than anything else.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
He's a very quiet, calm, deliberate, just working guy, not a real fired-up guy. And yeah, this was a pretty cool bunch.
Yeah, and
just
you can
kind
tell,
of calm.
You can tell that he's a real coach, and what I mean by that is he's a coach of fundamentals. You can see that the players are very much into dealing with their fundamentals. That's why they made a lot of great plays in the field. We're in the right places. You're a baseball guy, so you know if you're standing 2 feet the wrong way, something bad can happen.
What I've always thought about baseball is a very mathematical game.
Yeah,
there's a lot of geometry.
Yes,
and real baseball people keep a lot of weird statistics too.
Yes.
But because and they say that Johnson is one of those guys that he and you can see him doing a game looking at
playing
his numbers and stuff.
Yeah,
which
I
to me is a little weird, but it obviously works.
Yeah, but it's like you said. I mean, in our lifetimes, we've seen it go from what we thought maybe they were just putting anybody in the pitch because we didn't know what was going on, but to the point where it's like we know that left-hander can't hit this right-hander or whatever. It's
right.
Very, very technical.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've seen some games, particularly, I guess right before maybe the end of the season, where he would throw a pitcher for two batters and then put another guy in. And I'm like, what is he doing?
And you think he's almost wasting the guy, but he's doing it strategically.
But whatever he's doing, it's thoughtful.
Yeah.
In his mind, there's some kind of arithmetic.
And you can see it in the players, even their demeanor. And what I really enjoyed was watching these guys, and I'm sure they'll do it again tonight, but after they had their team meetings or whatever, there were a lot of fans who were still outside the stadium when they first got back. Lots of them went back out and signed autographs, particularly for the little kids who, a little kid, that's what I always say about an athlete. When an athlete says something to a little kid or signs a jersey or a baseball or something like that, that goes forever in their life. That may make that kid become a ball player.
He'll never forget.
He'll never forget.
My two boys, who are now grown ups, my son Walt III, my other son Rhett, a little bit younger, I guess they were maybe 5 and 3, maybe a little older, 6 and 4. So we went to out to UNO to see UNO play LSU. And what was his name? There was a great ball player for LSU who hit a foul ball during warm-ups.
Yeah.
And it hit my son in the shoulder.
Yeah.
And my younger boy picked the ball up and threw it back on the field, and Walt yelled at him, "Wait, I wanted that ball." Well, the player came over, got the ball, came over during practice. during warm-up, signed it and gave it to my son. My son, Walt, has never forgotten that.
Well, I'll tell a story like that too. My son, Cary the second, he won a competition with the Boy Scouts when he was in the Boy Scouts selling popcorn, a thing that the Boy Scouts do. Girls sell the cookies, he sold the popcorn. So the winning prize was to go to the Saints facility and to go in the locker room, get the whole tour and everything. And some of the guys were there. And actually, when he got to see Drew Brees' locker, and, some of the guys said hello and signed autographs. He never forgot that to this day. He's 25.
Sure.
But that was a big moment. And, I look good in his eyes because I pushed him to do it. But it was great. It's what we said. It means a lot.
I'm going to tell you a quick story, too. When we owned the Zephyrs, my son, Rhett, was playing high school baseball. He was a big guy. And I'd taken him in the back. And when the game ended, to see some of the players and talk to some of the players. And we came out the players' exit. Yeah. And there were barricades set up, and the players there, and there was a crowd of people. And this little boy asked my son for his autograph. I mean, my son was a big guy. Yeah. My son said, "No, man, I'm not a player." Yeah. And the dad said, "Hey, man, you're a jerk. Why don't you give him your autograph?" And my son looked at me, and my son was like 15 years old himself. And he said, "Dad," I said,
"Just sign it." That's a great story.
And so to this day, that poor little kid thinks he got a professional baseball player's autograph.
We had a caller, Walt. Let me get to him. Mr. Elmore.
Yes, sir. How you doing, man? It's a pleasure to listen to both of you all. How you doing today?
How you doing? We're doing good. Doing good.
Oh, pretty good. I'm thinking about baseball. It's amazing how LSU is today because, when you think of LSU in the SEC, the Alabamas, Arkansas, LSU, Tennessee, they were considered football schools. But this is amazing. You got to give Skip Bourbon some credit because what he did, he not only put LSU on the map, I don't feel good with me, he not only put LSU on the map, he put the SEC on the map because if you think about it now, I've never known, I would just say about half the teams in the SEC made the baseball tournament. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's changed a lot. I mean, and the College World Series was something that had been going on for a long time, and I don't think many of us even knew it was going on until things really broke loose.
I mean, when you look at the numbers, USC has 12 championships.
Yeah.
All of those championships, I'm sure I was never even conscious there was a championship game going on.
Right. When they talked about that stat at the game the other day, and they talked about the years in the 60s and everything like that, I could not have told you who had the most championships in college baseball. Yeah. And LSU is second, by the way, folks. So that's even better.
With 8 wins, and I think USC had 12 wins over the years. But their last win was like 1981 or something.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a long time.
But I do remember when LSU played USC, one of the first World Series wins in the 90s, they played USC for the championship and beat them. Yeah. And I remember a lot of discussion then about this was the school. Yeah. That had won so many, but I don't even remember that LSU championship game.
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Elmer.
Yeah, yes, sir. I want to say one more thing. Look, I wanted to say to Mr. Leger, I appreciate when he talks politics, but I know right now we're in the mood of talking baseball, so I call baseball, but don't let what I said. But
we'll talk about whatever you want.
Yes, sir. We love talking baseball.
Yes, sir. Look, I appreciate when you come again so we can talk politics, Yes, sir.
I don't know anything about politics.
Yes, sir. All right, buddy. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Mr. Elmore.
Thanks for calling.
Sir. Thank you. Pleasure. Yes, sir. Thank you.
The other thing I want to get to, and we'll go to other topics, but last night we had a caller, Don, who mentioned something about Stephen Martin Sr., and I looked the guy up. He was the first African-American player at Tulane. And he was the first player to play in the SEC against LSU back in 1966. So, I mean, he's really a pioneer. He was the person who really, truly was the person who integrated the SEC.
Yeah,
and I think
that's amazing.
Like we said last night, because people have forgotten that Tulane was in the SEC for a long time, that was a major milestone.
That was a big milestone. And Tulane was a significant player and in a significant conference. I was a freshman at LSU. Maybe I was a sophomore when the first African-American signed a scholarship to play football at LSU, Chris Williams. Yeah. So, I mean, it's been a long time
Sure.
Those steps have been made significantly.
Yeah. And that's somebody who we need to remember, as we talked about before.
Steve Martin. I was talking about him today, too.
Things happen over the years, and sometimes these people get forgotten. And I think sometimes for young people particularly, remembering that history and us remembering it and helping them to look these things up and realize who the pioneers were.
That's right.
Because, as you know, we've been through a lot ourselves, but there's lots of people who do things for people that they don't even realize
they never
standing
get talked
on their
about,
shoulders.
right?
You really don't know you're standing on
I'm glad Jonathan, whoever called yesterday, they'd gone to St. Aug together. He and Steve Martin.
Right.
I was thinking the same thing. It was nice of him to call
to bring it up
and remember. Steve Martin.
Yeah, and that we appreciate that call. We like it when people bring up things, especially when you know somebody. When you knew somebody and you were their contemporary.
Absolutely.
Because that means a lot.
And you have a real pride in that yourself.
Yes,
you own it a little bit yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. The other thing, and we'll segue back into our port story, because we have some very interesting information you have about the port in St. Bernard that pertains to the Black community as well. So if we could talk about that.
Yeah, let me tell you about that. When in fact, I was in a meeting at the port this morning, and we were talking about some of the history of things that went on. And there was a report that came out that some of the opponents kind of funded that said the port hadn't looked at other locations. Well, it had. Looked at a bunch of other locations. In fact, before I was on the port, I had my own favorite a little bit farther down the river, but it was on the same side. And when I came on the port, I said, well, what about that location? When we started about this. So, well, you're going to have all the problems there with trucks and trains, except it's farther down.
Yeah.
And it's not big enough, and it's not enough, and it's outside the flood protection levee. And so I think I mentioned yesterday, originally the port had picked another site in St. Bernard, the Sinclair site.
Yeah.
And the pilots eventually, it was a smaller site.
That it was right.
It was really in the middle of thicker neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And the pilots said it was kind of dangerous.
Right.
But this site, and by the way, I was on a committee that helped rebuild the parish after Hurricane Katrina. And even in that strategic plan, this location in Violet is marked off for industrial for future development of ports.
Right. Okay.
And what we always thought back then, though, was one of the first school rebuilt in the parish was built right there.
Yeah.
Kind of on the edge of that property.
Yeah.
And then right next to it is a kind of historic African-American cemetery.
Right.
And then there's a small neighborhood, which is probably the predominant old, maybe 100, 150-year-old African-American neighborhood. It's been in the parish forever.
Right.
And the people, the students that go to that school, the Willie Smith Elementary School, to a large degree come from that particular African-American community. And so that school was built first.
Right.
And my view was, when I was appointed by the governor, I wanted to make sure that African-American community was comfortable with what was being done there.
Right.
Because we're very familiar with what's going on up and down the river, right? St. James Parish, when they're building chemical plants next to disadvantaged communities that don't have the political clout. And I was assured, and my position was, first of all, if there is a problem, if we're not accommodating the needs of that neighborhood, then I'm going to be against this thing, because one of the reasons I was put on the board by the governor was to say, advocate for St. Bernard.
Right.
What are the disadvantages? What can we do? What mitigations can we do, et cetera? And but I was assured, and I looked into it, and they were right, that they had been they being the port personnel, had been communicating with the preachers and the neighborhood and the neighbors.
Yeah.
And there's a little baseball field there, and assuring them, that there would be protection in terms of soundproofing and a buffer zone in the neighborhood. To me, that was maybe the number one concern of neighbors. And then there's some neighbors down below, too.
And what you're showing is that projects can be developed, as you said yesterday. This is a huge economic development shot in the arm for the state. They can be developed with the community and done in a proper way.
And you have to be thinking about it, too. And also, importantly, that community will be among those most benefited from this development.
Right.
The projections, and I looked at them again today, are that by 2023, when we theoretically would be opening the first phase of that port,
Yeah.
there'll be 600 to 1,000 jobs.
Right.
There's not a lot of industry and jobs being created in St. Bernard Parish right now. In fact, shortly after the storm, there was had tremendous growth as people came back.
Yeah.
And then in about 2020, 2021, the growth leveled off, and we're still only about 45,000 there.
Yeah.
It used to be 70,000. So there's a need for jobs. The median income in St. Bernard Parish is about $46,000.
Yeah.
The starting income at this port will be $75,000 to $85,000.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
So huge differences. So there'll be availability. Now the trick's going to be, and I'm not going to be on this port forever. My term will be ending, but I intend to stay around because I think some commitments have been made, and I want to see, and also as an economic development myself, that we get jobs to that community.
Right.
And I'm telling, and accordingly, because they have been engaged in the process, there's a tremendous amount of support. I would say the vast majority of that African American community right there supports the port.
Right.
The NAACP has given support to the port, the Urban League, and otherwise.
That's great.
And so there's been a lot of effort, and it's been reasonably successful. But I'm glad you brought that issue up because that's to me, one of the tough issues in the terms of developing this project, and it is that this Willie Smith School is right on the edge.
Yeah.
What the port has proposed since about the time the property was purchased, and it was and been having discussions since then, is to purchase that school.
Yeah.
And to offer land that the port owns in a better location for the school.
Right.
And build a brand new school on it, which would be state of the art.
Wow, that's great.
In the early stages, to me, from my perspective, there was a lot of agreement to that. I think now the opponents, of the port have determined that if we can stop the transfer of that school, we can somehow slow down the port. But not long ago, the port has actually made a pretty significant financial offer to the school board to actually acquire the land and build a new school, state of the art. And that African American community right there, that's largely the population
that goes
that's
to
in the district of that school.
Yeah.
So that's part of that mitigation. What can we do to make it better, better?
And the other thing, and say this quickly, the other thing about this is it shows that what we need in this area, sometimes we talk about different kinds of businesses and stuff like that, but some of the things that we really need for economic development, stabilization of population, because we are losing population, and those are the type of things that bring in population and stabilize the population that's there already.
Well, and we're not me anymore, but those younger people are having children now. Right?
Yeah.
And their children are going to school. The children are going to need to get jobs.
Yes. We're going to take a quick break. And we'll be right back.
Get in on the conversation at 504-582-9422.
Hey, WBOK, Ryan Richardson coming at you. Join me this Saturday live, June 28th from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. as I welcome President of Heartbeat NOLA, Maurice Trosclair. Join us as he talks about his experience with sudden cardiac arrest and how he survived right here on WBOK 1230 AM, streaming worldwide on WBOK1230.com. Please tune in and thanks for your support.
Hey everybody, it's Graylin Bryant Banks
and Kimber White Dupree
from the Front Porch.
Some combos are too good to miss. Now you can pull up a chair to the Front Porch anytime.
Just search WBOK Media and subscribe to the Front Porch Podcast.
Download, share, and hit us with a 5-star rating because New Orleans culture deserves to be heard loud and clear.
New Orleans, are you ready? A fresh voice in the city is here, bringing you the beats, the culture, and the stories that matter. From local music and food to real talk on what's happening in the streets. We've got you covered. Stay tapped in. Follow us on all platforms at WBOK 1230 for the latest updates and exclusive content. Your city, your culture, your news. Don't just hear about it, be about it. Follow WBOK 1230 now.
New Orleans never sleeps, and neither does WBOK. Now, every voice, every moment, and every show is in your pocket. Search WBOK Media wherever you get podcasts. Download, share, rate us 5 stars. Because when you support us, you amplify Black voices and the New Orleans culture.
WBOK, online at WBOK1230.com.
The Arnie and Cary Show with Arnie Philco and Cary Grant.
And we are back. Just want to say we have the talk line, 504-582-9422. I'm here with my great guest host, Walt Leger. We're talking about the port project in St. Bernard, but we're going to talk about now some of the ideas of economic development that are a adjunct to this port project that will happen and could happen and should happen in New Orleans East.
And I'm going to remind you again, I'm the old Walter Leger. My son, Walt III, not to be confused with. That's why I'm thinking this fellow before Mr. Emmett was talking about politics. My son knows a lot more about politics than I do. But I like to think I know a little bit about economic development.
I think you do.
And not enough, but I know how important it is, and you and I both do.
Yeah.
We were talking about how we remember the growth in New Orleans East.
Yeah.
And the effort needs to be made to regenerate that.
Yes.
It is the thought, and I think we talked about yesterday. The governor's on board. The past governor, John Bell Edwards, the present governor, Governor Landry, 100% supportive.
Right.
The 2 U.S. senators are for it. Congressman Troy Carter.
Yeah.
And so much of the political establishment, and a lot of and why. Because they believe that this is a tremendous economic development project.
Yes.
It's not like bringing the Super Bowl in once a year.
Right.
It's something that's going to happen every day.
Right. This is something permanent.
That's right.
Yeah.
And as a result, what happens when you develop something like this? What happened when they developed the Intercontinental Airport in Houston? Things developed around it.
Yeah.
Hotels, rental car places, all that type of stuff. Well, here, in the context of a port, we're gonna, we have hotels in the tourism industry,
sure,
which we hope will always be one of the tops in the country.
Right.
And we had a port industry that was significant, but the world has changed, and what's happening now is when we bring containers in, to the United States, they have to go somewhere, and the real opportunities for economic development are distribution centers, warehousing.
Can you explain just a little bit about what a distribution center is so people will understand size and scope
when you order stuff from Amazon, where do you think it comes from?
Right.
It doesn't come out of the sky.
Right.
There's an Amazon distribution center that the computers do whatever they do, and they say, oh, here's your order, bam, 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 and trucks are moving.
Yeah.
And so distribution centers are essentially these magnificent new modern facilities where goods and services will be stored and ready to move.
And then move to different places.
We were involved in the search for a new CEO and president last fall.
Yeah.
The head of economic development was involved. Our board was involved, several other civic and community leaders, and we ended up hiring Beth Branch, who was the number 2 person at the Port of Mobile.
Yeah, I remember.
And one of the things I grilled Beth on is, what do we get out of developing this? How important one is the development of LIT, of the Louisiana International Terminal in Violet, and what are we going to get out of it?
Yeah.
And she said, look, I wouldn't be coming if I didn't think this was the most important development in the world.
Wow.
And in my mind, I'm thinking maybe I'm trying to steal Nick Saban from the University of Alabama and bring Nick Saban to Louisiana,
but that's the
rather than the opposite, right?
Yeah.
And because she's been there, and she was explaining, she said, we have distribution facility that popped up in Montgomery, Alabama, hundreds of miles away.
Wow. Because there's so much commerce.
Because there's so much coming in, but the real development was in the Mobile area.
Yeah.
Right there, where you can move the trailers right off, and you unload the trailers and you distribute them into some kind of organized, what really smart people that know how to do this kind of distribution do.
Yeah.
And that's what I think a lot of people are seeing can happen in New Orleans East and other parts of New Orleans.
Yeah.
By the way, it's not just New Orleans, but Jefferson Parish also.
Sure.
We have offices there. We have a lot of the customers of the Port of New Orleans are based business-wise in Jefferson already. But we're going to have more businesses growing here.
Yeah.
And you can bet the investors, TIL, which is the financial company connected to MSC, which is Mediterranean Shipping Company, which will be one of the big customers of this port, will be developing other businesses.
Sure.
I mean, they are billions of dollar companies, and they've done market studies, and they've determined this is the place to come. And so you got all of this stuff. And our listeners know in New Orleans East, the locations, the land, the facilities waiting
to be used. Yeah, to be reused. And
to be reused in many, you're right.
Repurpose them. I mean, there's plenty of places that people are really worried about what's going to happen with them, and this is that opportunity for those places to become something else and do something else.
And I was involved pretty heavily in the rebuilding after Katrina on behalf of the governor.
Yeah.
And then I headed the St. Bernard Economic Development Commission, and I was having dinner and drinks one night with a fellow by the name of Andres Duani, who was from Harvard, was one of the top urban planners and urban developers in the world.
Yeah.
And he was telling me, he says, in parts of New Orleans, old communities die. You know, people are saying, oh, New Orleans is dying. Well, it's an old city, one of the oldest cities in the country. It's slowly dying.
Yeah.
So, well, now parts of it have died in one day.
Yeah.
So that means you can rebuild it.
And do something
instead
else.
of waiting for it to slowly die.
Yeah.
You can start over. He said, but there's one fundamental thing about urban planning, that is, if you are not growing, you are dying.
Right.
So you have to go out and get instruments of economic development like this port.
And as you just said, you don't get these opportunities that often, period. You don't get this scale at all. I mean, most places don't have big scale economic development projects. And you really basically have to have people realize that if you don't do this, if you miss this opportunity, St. Bernard Parish, our parish, everything, you will not see anything like this again.
Cary, about, 2 years ago, we were up in the week of the Washington Mardi Gras Ball. We go up and we meet with our senators and congressmen, and we meet with the Corps of Engineers and the appropriate maritime agencies and stuff. And so we were in Washington, and Governor Edwards invited a few of us to have dinner with him on like the Wednesday night there.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it's be a small, intimate, dinner, right? Well, we show up this restaurant, and it's not a big, but it's his family and some of his friends, and a few parish presidents, that he was particularly close to. And I was representing and still represent a bunch of the parishes in the opioid litigation, so I knew some of them.
Sure.
And this one, I'm not going to name him, but this one parish president came up to me. He said, "Walter, what is going on in St. Bernard with all these people opposed? Even the parish council opposed to the development of this." And I said, "Look, I'm not going to attack those guys. They have their political or personal reasons. I happen to disagree with them." He said, "Walter, I would give my political career to have a project like this in my parish."
Right.
He said, "We all dream of having something like this happen to our parishes, because of what it means to the future.
Yeah.
Because we know if we don't keep growing, we're going to die." And I think about what he said often, and I still wonder. I keep looking for the downside, the problems that this will create, and there are some.
Yeah.
But there's also a solution to every problem.
Yeah.
But if you identify them, and if both sides want to work on it.
One thing that this brings me to, that we talked about earlier, we are about to go through a real political process here in the city. All these flashbang politics are about to kick off. People are going to sign up to run for whatever on July 9th. And we both know some of the candidates that seem like they're going to be out there for whatever offices. But this people always talk about economic development. You've been around for a long time. Politicians always talk about economic development. I think that we need to make sure that we question these people about their take on this project particularly, and what you just said about, if you're not moving forward, you're basically dying. You're not moving backward. You're basically dying. Some of the population loss here is simply because of what you said right before the break. Younger people with families need opportunity. They need opportunity. They're people love New Orleans. They love the area. They love St. Bernard. I mean, you can't fight somebody about how much they love Louisiana and where they come
Absolutely.
from. I mean, you can never do that. But we need to have the practical piece there.
But no matter how much we love it,
yeah,
if our kids get out of school,
yeah,
whether it's high school or college or otherwise or postgraduate school, and there's no jobs for them,
they have to leave.
You know, how many people do you know, friends of yours, that their children have left?
Yes.
And gone away?
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm very fortunate. My 3 children have all live about 10 minutes away from me. So
yeah.
I get to see my 8 grandchildren pretty regularly. But I have close friends that have to get on an airplane and go visit a couple of times a year to see their grandchildren. And that's because their children moved away because they couldn't, well, they say because they couldn't find jobs here.
Yeah.
So that's what economic development is. It's jobs.
Yeah.
It's the ability to pass on from our children, from ourselves to our children, and ultimately our grandchildren, a way to make a living.
Yeah. I was speaking to a friend of mine just this past weekend, and I mean, his son literally works in the Middle East. He's very worried about what's going on now.
Sure.
But he works in the Middle East because of the very thing we're talking about. Well, because the opportunity for his degree, his type of degree, is not there, and he had to go that far away to have a job. So a kid who's born and raised in New Orleans who would stay here in a heartbeat. I'm sure of that. It's not even a question.
I remember when my older son Walt III, who everybody knows more about him than me.
Yeah.
When he was a senior in high school, we went toward schools on the East Coast. He was an extremely good student, had a lot of opportunities, and he fell in love with a school on the East Coast. I, of course, had been brainwashing him his whole life to go to LSU.
Right.
And I remember his mom telling me, don't let him go there.
Yeah.
Make him come. He'll meet some girl on the East Coast and never come home. And eventually, I said, I'm going to stay out of it. He's going to have to do what he has to do. He got recruited by the Honors College at LSU. And one day he came and he said, Dad, okay, I'm telling you where I made my decision. I said, okay, what? He said, you brainwashed me 18 years. I'm going to LSU.
We have a caller. Well, let me get to him. Don, hello.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening.
Hey, how you doing, Don?
Hey, Don.
Yes, sir. Enjoying the program and the information.
Thank
I had a question that pertains to when you talk about the preparation for the port and all of its ancillary support industries.
Mm-hmm.
In Houston, they built the 99 Grand Parkway, and they're building subdivisions for Exxon and these major corporations that's moving because they're, people from in El Segundo, California, and even in Virginia. They closed those offices. They can move them all to the Houston area.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that? Two questions. How does the planning, long-term planning that goes along with the development of the LIT, and how does the curriculum at schools correlates in the junior college, community colleges, city colleges, if you will, go along with preparing for management and even the career technical educational field? How would that change the curriculum in the state of Louisiana and even the surrounding states? Well, mainly Louisiana, since that's what you can control.
Yeah.
How does that enhance the public education for the preparation of these jobs and these career moves, not just jobs, careers? Thank you very much.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's an extremely good question because it doesn't do any good to create the jobs if you don't have people to fill the jobs and people properly trained. Interestingly, I'm on the board of Delgado Community College Foundation and Nunez Community College Foundation, and I know particularly Nunez right now is preparing curriculums to be able to train kids right out of high school and into the community college to work in LIT. Because like I think I mentioned on the air that the average median family income in St. Bernard and probably, I guess, east of the Industrial Canal, even through Lower Ninth Ward, is like $46,000, and the entry-level jobs are going to be 75 to 85,000 at this port.
And those are the permanent jobs. That's not just
we're talking about permanent jobs. That's not even the construction jobs.
Yeah, right.
That's not to mention the
piece.
construction jobs. Yeah. That's the long-term, of operating cranes, of moving, operating trucks, of moving containers, of the technological work and that type of thing, electricians, et cetera.
Right.
So you are correct. We have to be training our workforce to be prepared for these kind of jobs. If we're going to have 1,000 jobs in 2033, where are those people going to come from?
Yeah.
I know Nunez. I know both of the community colleges. Nunez, for example, has had a program of training people to be I forget what the term is, operators, I guess, at the oil refineries.
Yeah.
And they have, they specifically have specific curricula. I know the North Shore Community College, and because I visited with Tina Tinney, the chancellor of Nunez Community College, has a maritime training program.
Got it.
Which is more, toward barges and that kind of thing. Nunez is developing a program, or been trying to develop a program toward the use of wind technology, wind construction and operating, the fans and stuff. So yes, sir. Yeah, Donald, I think it was, right?
Yes, it was.
You hit the nail on the head. That's going to be really, really important, and that's exciting.
Yeah,
that we'll be training our kids.
And it shows, again, like you said, Walt, the peripheral things that drive these things. That means you have to go to school. That means the school has to make money. The schools here are talking about enrollments down or whatever's going on, and that changes that dynamic. It all has a synergy.
But by the way, interesting circle there. Yeah. And you nailed it, Cary. Yeah. So what does this mean? So we're gonna need teachers to teach the kids.
Right.
They're gonna have to pay tuition. But can they afford tuition, et cetera?
Yeah.
What the projections of the economist that does a lot of work for the state of Louisiana from LSU, the head of their department, their econometric expert who does statistics and stuff, has put together the market projections of this port LIT with how much tax revenue it will produce.
Sure.
And what it's showing is that, for example, St. Bernard Parish's budget right now is $23 million or so a year. It's showing about in the first year, 2023, there should be new taxes of about $20 million.
Right.
So you're almost doubling the budget. So that budget, some of that will go to the school system.
Right.
Some will go to the sheriff. Some will go to the parish
so they can strengthen and shore up their infrastructure and their government.
To start accommodating.
And their people, as you just said, if you want to have
paying teachers.
If you want to have more teachers, you're paying more teachers. If you want to have more cops, you have more cops. People have to live somewhere. It's those synergistic circles that really happen with true economic development are real. The thing he talked about, the thing Don asked about people being moved, the globalization, which is all part of, the globalization of companies and consolidations and all of that. Like you said, with moving people to Houston area from different places, people can work from practically anywhere, but this is a practical work site as well, where you have to be there to work. You can't work from home from a port. So it will draw some people, and maybe some people would consolidate some businesses, or as you said, some of the businesses that may be over here, and Harahan may say, well, we need to be closer, so we'll do something over there too.
That's right.
So that could easily happen with something like this.
Well, and that's the belief that not only will you create jobs, but those jobs will also create families that will want homes.
Yes.
And presumably buy homes in St. Bernard, buy them in New Orleans East, buy them in Jefferson, buy them in St. Tammany. But so once you start drawing people in here to work, that's what the economists call the rippling effect.
Right.
The impact on other parts of the economy.
And another thing, the president talks about a lot of things about, manufacturing jobs and doing things here. But as we both know, it's going to take 20 years to build a car plant or something like that.
That's right.
That doesn't, a steel plant, even worse. But something like this that is practical, that brings goods and things in that people are buying that have to be transferred around the world. The things, like you said, things that come down the river already that will be part of this too. The grains and the commerce from agriculture that will be a part of this whole thing. That is a huge thing. That is practical work that people can do.
By the way, as evidence of the realization of the impact of something like this, LIT nationally, the point has been made. It will be good for St. Bernard. It'll be good for the New Orleans area, the region, and the district of the Port of New Orleans, which is Jefferson, New Orleans, St. Bernard, and St. Town, and the state of Louisiana. But by the way, we on the Mississippi River, we get products from all the way up north.
Yes,
and we have support. We have the Port of New Orleans goes to, I guess, in the fall. Memphis, the Port of Memphis, has what they call Port of New Orleans night because we do so much business with the Port of Memphis and the Port of St. Louis and the farmers and that ship their products down this way. Shipping. I went to Cuba with the governor and the Secretary of Agriculture a few years back, and I sat with the Secretary of Agriculture, Dr. Strain, and he taught me about chicken farming and how they produce chickens up in air-conditioned environments in North Louisiana, and they freeze them and they ship them down, through containers and through our facilities down to South and Central America.
There you go.
So you're producing jobs elsewhere too,
right,
not just here.
Right.
But most importantly to us, we want them here. We want to keep our kids here.
But as I said, and earlier in this segment, but I really, really mean this. And we talked about it, Arnie and I talk about this a lot, about having candidates on once people have declared to be candidates. But we want to ask them the proper type of questions. And you're bringing up something that if this isn't on the tip of their tongue, if they don't have some approach to this or some idea about what's going on here, then we need to think about if we're going to vote for those people.
I've heard business leaders talk about the three most important things that we need to get commitments from candidates on here. One is LIT, which isn't directly in the city of New Orleans, but will impact the city tremendously. The other is the redevelopment of the old Charity Hospital.
Yes.
And then the other is the river development,
on the riverfront,
on the riverfront near because those are big projects that will have, tremendous impact. Again, jobs. Again, new kind of industry and bring different things.
Well, it's interesting you say that because the riverfront project, I was listening to some people talking about some Super Bowl related stuff.
Right.
And the NFL's thing, and the Super Bowl's growing by leaps and bounds. All these big events are, and we're a big event city. And they said, we need more hotel rooms. There was a time when you and I would have said, man, we got so many hotel rooms.
We got too many hotels.
What we're doing. But they want more.
You're right.
So another big hotel down by the river is not a thing we don't need.
Well, and that's what, my son, Walter III is the president of New Orleans Company, and that's what they're into. And that's what he said. That Omni Hotel has got to get built. For the convention center and other conventions and otherwise, also as a symbol till we can get things done. And it is, I've heard that too.
We're going to take another short break and we'll be right back.
WBOK online at WBOK1230.com.
Hoops, Heat, The Truth, on demand. Ball Don't Lie is now live on all podcast platforms. Tap in, search WBOK Media, find Ball Don't Lie, and bring the fire with you wherever you go. Download, share, and leave that 5-star review because the game doesn't stop when the show ends.
Late nights are made for chillin', and you can do just that every Sunday night at 10 p.m. as DJ Wick brings you The Love Zone. It's the perfect way to top off your weekend with your favorite old and new school ballads. So sit back, relax, and let DJ Wick take you to the Love Zone on WBOK and on the World Wide Web at WBOK1230.com.
On the next edition of The Way Forward, Mildred the Money Dr. Dillon will pay us a visit to discuss managing our finances in tight times. Plus, I'll share what's good news, the Go Forward message, and tell you about something that you need to know. Join me Saturday at 3 p.m. It's The Way Forward with Eddie Francis here on 1230 a.m. or streaming live at WBOK1230.com and the Play Old app. On WBOK, what New Orleans is talking about.
New Orleans, are you ready for a voice that says what you're thinking? Who that, you might ask? Arrington Gavin. That's right, I'm your guy, host of the Arrington Gavin Show, giving you so much filled with bold opinions, real conversations, and zero sugarcoating. We're going to be diving into the issues that matter: politics, pop culture, and all the above, unfiltered and unafraid. Catch the Arrington Gavin Show weeknights from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., Monday through Fridays, right here on WBOK, what New Orleans is talking about.
Plan on flying? It's time to upgrade to a Real ID. Because in order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a Real ID, or you'll need another acceptable form of identification. So don't wait. Find out how to get your Real ID at tsa.gov/Real ID. That's tsa.gov/Real ID, or visit your local DMV. And then you'll be cleared for takeoff.
WBOK.
Better pay attention.
Powered by Cox Business.
The Arnie and Cary Show with Arnie Philco and Cary Grant.
And we are back. This is Cary Grant, and my guest host is Walt Leger. We're having a great conversation. Well, I just wanted to segue into something a little bit that's near and dear to your heart for the last few minutes, and we'll talk about it again when you come back. But this idea of cancer research funding and everything, we're sitting on Xavier's campus where they have a very large, for the school their size, NIH grant, and they're working on breast cancer and a lot of other things here. And these people are scared to death about what's going to happen with this great research that's having a tremendous impact.
Kelly, you're right. This is an important enough story for us to dedicate a whole show to, I think, at some point. But the short term of it is, and I'm on the Louisiana Cancer Research Center board, where LSU and Tulane came together in about 2003 by legislative act, and Xavier, and eventually Oxnard came together for the purpose of putting all the resources together to go out and fight cancer.
Yeah.
And particularly to petition the National Cancer Institute to create a center of excellence here.
Yeah.
And now, when in the 90s, when I chaired the New Orleans Regional Chamber of Commerce, we determined we want to also develop the medical schools and the medical research as an economic development aspect.
Yeah.
But suddenly, this president, we have been having real success attracting some of the top cancer researchers in the world.
Yes. People have to understand it. In the world, coming to LSU and Tulane and Xavier. Yeah.
And we've been doing that by leveraging federal grants from the National Institute of Health, which they call indirect, to cover indirect costs.
Yeah.
And that covers a lot of the staffing and the housing, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then you can do the research. Well, we have a high incidence of cancer in Louisiana, particularly among minority populations.
Yes.
So we've been focused. We've been having great success. We're finally rocking and rolling. This is something we have suddenly been doing really good at.
Yeah.
And the president, by executive order, not just for us, but all over the country, is pulling out from under us some of the NIH funding.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, the heads of LSU and Tulane and Xavier and Oxnard are worried to death that they're going to lose some of these great, researchers and doctors that they spend so much time recruiting.
And all the research that you built. If you shut down a lab, all that research just goes.
I'm a 3-time cancer survivor. My oncologist told me that I asked him about it. He said, Walter, just to give you one example, I have patients in a trial that's got 800 people.
Yeah.
The rug's being pulled out under that trial. He said, I have some of my patients will die.
Yeah.
That might have lived.
Yeah.
And this is not a question of like the senator that said, oh, we all have to die. We don't have to die today.
No.
Part of what we try to do is extend out the lives of our families and make them fine. And that's what he's the people whose lives we could save from this camp, because we can't give them the drugs or the medication or the program.
And the really bad, as you said, and all of it's bad, but the really bad part about this is if you stop research and you lose a researcher to another country or whatever, it's difficult to ever get them back.
Like I read something today that says 75% of those researchers are looking to go out of the country.
That's terrible. Thank you so much for being here, Walt. I know you're going to be back on some future shows, and I really appreciate you being here. I'm going to be on the show tomorrow night. Talk to you tomorrow, everybody.
Thank you.